Welcome to the podcast, Let the Prophet Speak. Today we continue our study of the book of Shmuel Aleph. That's the first book of Samuel. And we are about to begin chapter 10. At the end of our last chapter, we ended the encounter. We were at the ending of the encounter between Shaul, the future King Saul, and the prophet Shmuel. And Saul and his young servant boy had been looking for donkeys, Saul's father's donkeys, and they ended up taking a detour, meeting Shmuel. And Shmuel has just informed Saul that at the last verse, as they're walking out of the city, as he's escorting them out of the city and on their way home, he says, "Ashmiacha, I am going to tell you the word of God." And what the next thing he does is what we're about to read, chapter 10, verse 1. Vayikach Shmuel et pach Hashem, and as soon as he tells Saul that I'm going to tell you the word of God, he takes out a vial or a flask of oil, vayitzok al rosho, and he pours it onto Saul's head in order to demonstrate to Shaul that he is going to be anointed a leader. Vayishakeu, and he kissed him. Vayomer, and he said, "Halo, ki mishachacha Adonai al nachlaso l'nagid." Behold, this is the reason why I am kissing you and anointing you, is because God has chosen you, God has anointed you to be a leader over his inheritance, his people. Now, deliberately, Shmuel here chooses the language nagid as opposed to melach. Nagid meaning a leader or a ruler of sorts. But it does not, deliberately did not use the term melech, king, which hints to what we had mentioned in the previous chapter as well, that it seems like Shmuel's intention was to kind of create Shaul set him up as more than the shofet, more than the judges that have been leading the people for the last few hundred years, which Shmuel will be the last one of those, but less than an actual king. So somehow fulfill the people's words, but not them. And again, he deliberately chooses the term nagid here. But then he continues to say, Belechtecha. Remember, just to remind you, on the trip to this place that brought Saul and his servant here, on the way, at first, Saul said, "We need to stop looking for the donkeys and go home because my father is worried about me." This was one very positive thing that we saw, that Saul was sensitive to his father's feelings and sensitive to what's important to his father, and that he was ready to do anything he needed to do to search for the donkeys, but when he realized that it would be more important to go home because his father would be more worried about him than the donkeys, he said, "Let's go home." The other thing we saw, that Saul had respect for the prophet, so that when the servant said, "Let's go see the prophet," Saul said, "Well, we don't have anything to give him." And then he found the boy had some silver to give him. So these were positive things that we saw from Saul. And when Shmuel tells Saul the things that he's about to say, we're going to see kind of like a backward replay of it all, in which Shmuel is acknowledging that Saul's concerns were legitimate and appropriate and signs of a person who is considerate of others. So, when you leave today from me, in other words, when you take leave of me, as you're about to do, you're going to find Shnei Anoshim, two people, im kivurat Rachel, that are together, that are now at the place of the burial of Rachel, which is in Bethlehem. So that's where they are now. But you will meet them as they go, Bigvul Binyamin B'Tzeltzach. You will meet them as they approach the border between the land of Judah and the land of Benjamin, the tribe of Yehuda and Binyamin, in the place called Tzeltzach. That's where you will meet them. V'yomru elach, and they will tell you, Nimtzu'u ha'asalnos, the donkeys have been found, the sharalach levakesh, those donkeys that you went to look for. So don't worry, your mission has been fulfilled. V'hinei notasha vicha et divrei antanos, and your father by now has forgotten about, he's left aside the issue of the donkeys. V'doag lochem, and he's worried about you. Lamar saying, Mo'es elivni, what am I going to do about my son? What happened to my son? Because he's gone now several days. So he's worried about you, as you said. And again, validating Saul's concerns. And then you will continue from there, and continue on your journey home. Uvasa ad Elon Tovar, and you will come to the Elon, and Elon is a type of tree, translated often as a terebinth, but a large tree that was which is at Tovar, this place of Tovar. So, the tree must have been a landmark of sorts. And there you will find Shlosha Anashim, 3 men, that are Olim Elho Elohim Beit El, that are on their way up towards. Literally, this means towards the God, or the place where people worship God, in Beit El. Beit El, as we know, is the place where Jacob, back in Genesis days, slept and saw the vision of the ladder. Is a place where there was clearly a bama, an altar, and the people were on their way to worship God there. Now, again, emphasizing the point that at this point the tabernacle at Shiloh was no longer functioning, because that ended when the ark disappeared and when the family of Eli disappeared a couple of chapters ago. And now the ark is set in a different place, which we'll get to in a minute. Nosei shlosha gedolim, and these people would be carrying 3 goats. Ve'achad nosei shloshes kikros lechem, and one of them will be. One of them will be carrying 3 goats, baby goats. Ve'achad nosei shloshes kikros lechem, and one will be carrying 3 loaves of bread. Ve'achad nosei nevel yain, another one will be carrying a jug of wine. So they'll have wine. Goats, they'll have food to eat and wine to drink. V'shalu l'cha shalom, and they will greet you in peace. V'nasnu l'cha shtei lechem, and they'll give you 2 pieces of bread. V'lakachtom yadam, you'll take it from them. So don't worry, you will be supplied with food. Trust me, it'll be fine. So, and this reminds us again of the food that Shaul was worried about when they were turning towards meet the prophet. He said, remember then that we don't have any bread, right? So Shmuel is acknowledging that concern of his and saying, don't worry, there's bread. Acharkein, and after that, Tavo Givat Elohim, you will reach the Givat, the hill or the high place of God. Now this is the place where the Aron Kodesh, the Holy Ark, was residing. Remember, we learned a few chapters ago that after the Ark returned from the Philistines, it was placed in a place where a man named Yehoshua was watching it and guarding it, and this was on a high place. So you're going to go there. But now, years later, even though Shmuel had led the people in a victory against the Philistines were again encroaching on the people and were again asserting their control over the people of Israel. And at that place where the ark was standing, there was a garrison, Asher Sham Nitzivei Pilishtim. There are the officers, the military leaders of the Philistines are located in that place, watching over the holy place of the Israelites, to assert their dominion over the Israelites and to keep them in servitude. And this is one of the reasons why Saul is being called upon to be king, to get rid of the Philistines, to get rid of this their overlordship. When you come to the town that is in that place where the ark is, and you will meet a group of prophets that are coming down from the high place. In other words, they will have completed their worship at the bama, at the altar, and they're coming down from there. V'lifneim, and in front of them there will be playing nevel, v'tof, v'chalil, v'chinar. These are 4 musical instruments, a lyre and timbrels and flutes and harps. V'hema misnabeim, and in the singing and dancing, and they after the ecstasy that they achieve while they're worshiping God at the altar, they will be prophesizing. Now, what does this mean, prophesizing? Misnabim, meaning here it doesn't mean from the language of linabot, not to speak. They will be speaking words of holiness, spiritual words. They will be engaged in spiritual activities and tapping into that wisdom that comes from that close relationship with God in a joyous atmosphere. And the Spirit of God will then rest upon you as well, Saul. And you will speak prophecy together with them. You'll become a different man. What we're sensing here is Shmuel is telling Shaul is something that we were sensing until now. Shaul seemed until now to be a tall, strong, good-looking man. He was a loyal son. He was hardworking. He was respected. He had all these qualities. He was even had the qualities of humility, which we've seen demonstrated several times. But we didn't see any spirituality. We didn't see any relationship with God. So here Shmuel is saying, I acknowledge all of your human needs and your human attributes. But here, after that, after you're told about that your mission for the donkeys is done, your father needs you, you have food and water and food and wine. Now you can go, and now you need to bring that to the next level. You need to bring God into your life. So when these signs happen to you, I might have skipped the last few words of verse 6, and you will become a different person, Shmuel says. You'll become a different person, you will achieve that level of spirituality. When these signs that I'm telling you happen to you, now, because God is with you, you can do as you find and see fit. In other words, now once you attach spirituality to your physical attributes and you bring God into the picture, now you can trust yourself to make decisions because now God is with you. And I want you to after that, before I travel, you travel to Gilgal, right? And I will go join you at Gilgal. Gilgal is the famous place where Joshua had set up camp when the people first entered the land, and it was the home base for the conquering of the land. So it's an appropriate place to start off a new monarchy, just like it was the place where the beginning of the settlement of Israel occurred. And I will come down and join you there, to make a public celebration of your inauguration as the leader. Then we will bring burnt offerings to God, and bring peace offerings to God. Shivat yamim tochel ad bo yelecha. You'll be waiting there for 7 days until I get there to join you. When I get there, I'll let you know what we're going to do and how we're going to do this. And it was as soon as Saul turned his shoulder, turned away from Shmuel to walk and do this, God already gave him a new heart. The Spirit, and this is being presented in a positive way. Saul was already a different person. He just left the mindset. His soul left the mindset of being a simple, plain person who doesn't deserve to be the leader, to being someone who recognizes that he has the potential to soon become the leader of the people of Israel. And on that day, all of the signs occurred just as Shmuel had described them. So eventually, after all those things happened, they did make it to the Aron, to the place where the ark was resting at Giva. And behold, there was, just as Shmuel had predicted, there was a group of prophecies that greeted him. Vatitzlach alav ruach Elohim, and the Spirit of God got a hold of him. Vayisnabe b'socham, and Saul among them was Vayisnabe, became the spiritual person. And what was interesting here is that people knew Saul. He was known for the qualities that he had, but no one knew him as a spiritual person. No one knew that he had that aspect of him, of his personality. So, Vayihi kol yodome et moshel shom, that everyone that knew him from the previous days, his days before, Vayiru v'hineim neviim niba, and now he's standing with the prophets and he's prophesying, right? Vayomer am Yisrael, people said one to another, Ma ze ha'il ben Kish? What happened to the son of Kish? Hagam Shaul b'neviim, is Saul also among the prophets? Like, what happened to him? Something we've never expected to see Saul do. All of a sudden we see that spiritual side of him. We see that suddenly now he became this spiritual person among the prophets, singing and saying these words and so on, speaking of godly matters. Vayan ish misham vayomer omi avihem, and another person that was there watching and listening to the people talk, umi avihem, and he said, "Who is their fathers?" And I'm going to use Rashi's explanation of what this question means. In other words, what's the big surprise? If it does it require a hereditary a father who's a prophet, so that you should be a prophet? Who's the father of all of these prophets? These are people that achieved a level of spirituality, a level of holiness. And so could Saul. Why not? Just like everyone else. Why is that such a surprise to you? Because of this exchange and this discussion, it became just a saying, a proverb among the people. Whenever you saw a person who you never expected he would be the one that fill in the blank. So people would say, Hagam Shaul ban V'im, is Saul one of the prophets too? Because this became just a manner of speech. Eventually Saul became a famous person, but people remembered this incident. And that became a proverb among the people. Vayichal meis nabos, and he ended this time of prophecy, meaning he stopped after he left. He took leave of this group. Vayavo habama, and eventually he turned and went towards the altar. Vayomer dod Shaul, and the uncle of Shaul said to him, Elov said to him, Viel Naro, and his son, On halachtem, where did you go? Where have you been this entire time? Because this was, and remember, Giv'ah was the place where Saul had started. Giv'ah is the place where he was from. And remember also Giv'ah, and don't forget that Giv'ah is also the place where the awful story of the concubine that ended the book of Judges happened. So now we have a Benjaminite who was a member of the tribe that had committed that awful deed from the actual town where that awful deed happened, is about to become the leader of the people. And instead of having a group of people doing something so awful, that is unspeakably awful things that had occurred with the rape and murder of the concubine, now we have a group of people that are prophets worshiping God. So an halachtem, he said to them, so where did you go? You guys disappeared this whole time. Remember, the family was afraid for their well-being after they didn't come back right away. So vayomer levakeshes asanos, we went to search for the donkeys. Vanir eki ayin, and we could not find them. We wherever we looked, we looked and they weren't there. Vanavo el Shmuel, and eventually we went to Shmuel, to Samuel the prophet, to see if maybe he could help us find them. Vayomer dod Shaul, and the uncle of Saul says to him, Hagida nalimo amar lechem Shmuel. So when you got there to Samuel, what did he tell you? So now you'd expect Shaul to say, well, he told us a lot of strange things because he told me that I was going to be the next leader of Israel. But that's not what he said. Vayomer Shaul al dodo, and Saul said to his uncle, Haged higid lanu, he told us, Ki nimtzu atonos, not to worry, because the donkeys have already been found. V'yet dvar hamelucha lo hagid, but Saul didn't say anything about being the king. Asher amar Shmuel, that which Shmuel had spoken to him. Shmuel did not tell him this is a secret, but Saul didn't tell his family about it. And again, most of the commentaries look at this as a sign of modesty. That Shaul wasn't about, he said, Shmuel said, when I come to Giv'ah, I will tell you what to do. He didn't say, that he has to go announce himself the king or anything like that. He's waiting for the prophet to come and give him instructions as how to take over. Shaul didn't let it go to his head, at least at this point in his career, that now I'm the king and therefore I'm going to be the king. I have to do something to establish that fact on the ground. And he didn't even tell his family. So we're going to stop here, and we'll learn the second half of chapter 10 in the next podcast, as we learn about how the people gathered under Shmuel and how as the process of the inauguration of Shaul continues. Thank you so much for studying together. Looking forward to studying the rest of this chapter with you, and of course the rest of this beautiful book of Shmuel.